Well, we start with the Roman Empire. And Mr. Octavian. And that's really a funny story. Octavian was the nephew of Julius Caesar. And he took upon himself he wanted to present himself as an heir to Caesar's legacy. But he was not exactly a person like Caesar. Caesar was a radical. He was an atheist. He was an Epicurean. Epicureans and atheists in antiquity were kind of more or less considered the same. A provocative man in many regards for traditional people the way the Romans were. Octavian was much more traditional. He was a typical Roman, austere, disciplined, hardworking, not talking too much, but doing. And the series of civil war that we finished last time around, end up with his victory. The final victory was over Mark Antony, who actually ended up with Cleopatra in Egypt for the same reason that I mentioned with regard to Caesar. Cleopatra had the resources, the food, that can make Roman politicians popular. And the final battle was fought right here off the coast of Greece. The place was called Actium. Where Octavian defeated Mark Antony and Cleopatra, and they run away and kill themselves, each in their own way. Antony with the sword, and Cleopatra actually, according to the legend, put her hand in the jar that was where the snake was. There was a snake. Egyptian snakes are really bad. It's in the desert, and they come to feed on the water and so forth. So there's a lot of poisonous snake in Egypt. And according to legend, that's how she died. Anyways, the point for us important is that Octavian won, but he didn't want to make the same mistake that Caesar did. Caesar was elected dictator for life, which means king. And for the Romans, to be a king invokes the story of the rape of Lucretia that she told us about, right? Kings do bad things. They rape our daughters, and we kill them. That's what the Romans do. That's the message of the story that you told us, right? The story is, you're a king, and you behave like, let me not use the words, and we'll kill you. Eventually there might be a discussion, how are we going to kill you? What are we going to kill you? And they killed Caesar. So Octavian was a wiser man, he didn't want to be killed. So he came up with a very creative way to doing it. He called himself, no, I'm not a dictator, I'm not a king, I'm just princeps, which means the first. Princeps is the first. The first what? The first citizen. So all the Romans are equal, and I'm just the first citizen. That's the way he did it. Did everybody believe it? They better believe it. So they were not given options. So he kept whole structure of the republic going. The consuls were still being elected every year, 2 consuls. Sometimes he was one of the consuls, sometimes he was not. The Senate was still meeting and discussing things and making decisions, except all the decisions that the Senate made were his decisions. And he would have his guards guard the doors of the Senate to make sure that the senators vote the way their conscience tells them to vote. So, a lot of people thought it was a dictatorship, but it was a very successful dictatorship, let's put it this way. He managed to make this transition. It was very difficult for the Romans because of their traditions to make from a republic into an empire, into a kingdom. And he did it. He lived long enough. Oh, AD, right? Almost 45 years. So long that when he died, nobody even bothered to talk about restoring the republic. In 45 years, the Romans just forgot about everything about the republic. And his adopted son became a new princeps. We now call them emperors. His adopted son Tiberius. And then there was Caligula, and then Claudius, and then Nero. So that's from the same family. This is what is called the Julio-Claudian dynasty. Octavian did a lot of things that were theatrical. He was a master of propaganda. The ancient Romans didn't have television, didn't have social media and things of that sort. So the propaganda had to be done, like advertising has to be done in the ways of architecture, for example. So, I don't know, one of the things that he did was to close the gate of the temple of Janus. Janus was an ancient Roman god, and he was god of the doors. Two-faced, right? One face here and one in the back. And in the way that you can get into the doors from here or from that side. So very interesting gods. Ancient Roman had this superstition that you were not supposed to step on the threshold here of the doors. It brings wedlock. Actually, it brings quarrel within the house. But why was this so significant? So, one day he came out in the city, went to the temple of Janus, and there was a whole ceremony, and they closed the door, and the doors were never opened again. Well, that has to do with the Roman custom. When Rome was at war, these doors would be ceremoniously opened. In other words, Janus was a god of conflict. So when the door opened, there is conflict. And you have to fight the war. And when the doors are closed, there is no conflict. And so anyways, he would make a ceremony like this to introduce the era of peace. Was this propaganda? Yes. But was it true? Yes, it was true also. Rome from the 130s BC till 31 BC was perpetually at war. For 100 years there was these civil wars and conflicts. And Octavian ended that for good. So, he was a great patron of the art. Including patron of the most famous Roman poet, Virgil. And one of the things that Virgil did, as I mentioned before, he would collect these Roman legends and make them into beautiful poetry, including that poem that talks about a virgin bearing a child, and that child was going to introduce the golden age. That he collected it. Most importantly, he is remembered for an epic poem called the Aeneid, which is the story of Aeneas. Who is Aeneas? Some people say that Virgil invented the whole story in order to flatter Octavian. Some people say that there is some base for it. Aeneas was a Trojan. Aeneas was a Trojan. And from Troy, he actually escaped after the city of Troy fell to the Greeks. He escaped and he ended up in Carthage. There in Carthage, he fell in love with Dido, Queen of Carthage. Dido. And the love story of Aeneas and Dido is also one of the more famous love stories in history, especially because it ends tragically. Aeneas is about to live in Carthage, but marry Dido and so on and so forth. And then he is reminded by the gods that, no, you're the founder of the city of Rome. Not exactly Rome, because what about Rhea Silvia? Well, he was I think, grandfather of Rhea Silvia. So he comes first into the area of Latium. So he leaves Dido, comes to the area of Latium, sets up a shop in Latium in a village, and therefore, a couple of generations later, you have the story of Rhea Silvia that you did, right? So the purpose of the myth is what Dido does is that she commits suicide. She commits suicide. And therefore curses the Romans for being treacherous and explaining the wars between Rome and Carthage that were going on for 100 or so years. Right? Anyways, Octavian became so successful that he was given the title of Augustus, which means, what does it mean? Exalted. Your Highness, right? Right? That's how you address royalty, Your Highness. Yeah. So that's what it means. And therefore a month was named after him. August, right? He also made sure that another month is named after his adopted father, and that would be Julius Caesar. So that's the month of July, right? Modest people, right? How were these months called before? Huh?
Maybe didn't exist. It didn't exist at the time.
Oh. I hate to admit it, but you're right. Well, let's explain it a little bit more.
Like, they weren't technically a month, but they were just still there.
They were, yeah, and they were there. They were there. They just had different names. Well, let's start with, the next one is September. What does September mean?
Wasn't it the 7th?
Seventh, right, seventh. So August was then called the 6th month. And July was 5th, Quintilius and Centilius. Right? Before July is, well, which month?
June.
Named after? Something Roman. June. Remember the geese? Juno, who was Juno? The wife of supreme god of the Romans, Jupiter. Jupiter and Juno. In Greece it was Zeus and Hera. And here is Jupiter. So anyways, April means when the plants bud in spring. March is Mars, right? February is some sort of festival, Roman February is a Roman festival, and January is Janus. One of the things that is important here with Julius Caesar, it was actually Julius Caesar who introduced this kind of calendar with the Romans. Calendar was a complete mess before Julius Caesar. And Julius Caesar did it on the basis of Egyptian astronomy. Egyptians were really good at astronomy because they needed astronomy to get exactly the days of the flooding of the Nile. When does the flooding of the Nile start? When it's going to stop? Then, you know, there's a lot of sludge on the ground, so you have to so astronomy is really important for the Egyptians. So Egyptians came up with the solar year. And the solar year is our year. That's the year that lasts 365 days and 1/4 roughly. For the most part, people are using all kinds of lunar calendars. And lunar calendar is, how long does it take a moon to go from a full moon to a full moon? Exactly a month? Like 30 days, 31 days?
No, it's like, it's separated into weeks.
I think it's something like 28 days or something. So if you have a lunar calendar that every month is 28 days, you end up with 12 months that are 28 days, but you need to get to 365. So you would usually add a month to get to so you have 12 months and then an extra month, 13 months of, not a full month, but just to get to the whole thing. Otherwise you would get out of sync. And this applies to the Jewish calendar, this applies to the Mesopotamian calendar, this applies to the Arabic calendar. For example, Arabs still use the lunar calendar today. But we, due to Julius Caesar, we switched to solar calendar, and therefore they used this opportunity to introduce months and gave me an opportunity to talk about this, which is absolutely fascinating, but I don't know. Does it have anything to do with Western civilization? Yeah, I think so. The point of this class, you know, it's not just to learn about the past. I mean, I'm a historian, I love the past, and I just can't stop reading about it. Just that's what I like. But for you guys, the point is to make a connection. And to start a conversation. Did you know that Julius Caesar actually introduced the solar calendar? Oh, I didn't know that. Well, what a fascinating topic. Anyways, so what else we have? We have things talking about religion. When was Jesus born?
Roughly December.
Hmm?
No, not December. They say Christmas, but not Christmas. I think
25th of December, Christmas,
No.
right?
Yeah.
Let's take it, it's 25th of December. Of what year? Huh? The year?
The year 0. Or 1.
The year 1, right, because the year 0 does, right, to 2020. So it's 2020 after the birth of Jesus. That's how we count the years. Now, you might want to be politically correct and call it the common era. I'm not too fond of the idea of being overly political. You might call it whatever you want, it's just still counting from the day when the Jesus was born. You might, want to call it different anyways. But they counted their years a little bit differently. For example, the Romans counted their years from ad urbe conite, from the founding of the city. So for example, the year 31 BC was actually for them 722. Since the founding of the city, right? And so on and so forth. So that's about it, right? So, we continue with the Roman Empire next time around.